everybody to the next episode of Stories of Jeppe. I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Grazer Normand, who's welcomed us into his home in Durban, him and his wife Lorraine. Thank you for the hospitality. Grazer is one of the most passionate Jeppe boys I've ever met. And when I bumped into Dale at the airport coming down to Durban, he was extremely excited to see what the outcome of this podcast is going to be. Just speaking to Grazer before, there are 1,000 stories that we could probably go through, and I get a sense that we might have to do a continuation of this episode, which we'll be happy to do if you were happy to do it one day. Again, thank you very much for your hospitality. We look forward to hearing all the stories, and over to you, Chad.
Mr. Norman, thank you so much for your time, sir. It really is an honor. My first question for you today is, you went to Jeppe during the 1950s. I matriculated in 2020, Jonathan's also 2010s. So I just want to know, when we were going through these questions, what was the atmosphere like at Jeppe during the 1950s?
Well, it's a good question, because when we think back, we were very fortunate at the time. We had Mr. Alan Grant was our headmaster, and he was a stickler for manners and politeness. He really taught us everything, you know. A lot of people think that your manners and that come from home, but as far as we were concerned, I learned more about etiquette at Jeppe High than I did at home. Because, you know, once you get home, you got your pals, you go out and you play and everything. But when you went to school, no. When you walked into that classroom, you stood up. They taught you the basics of what every kid should know. And that's, to me, that's where through Alan Grant, and I mean, people, even guys like Dave Quayle, who try to follow in Alan Grant's footsteps. He would even try and walk with his hands behind his back like Alan Grant did. But Alan Grant was unique, and I don't think there's a head boy, whether or a headmaster or a teacher or a scholar, that could actually point a finger and say, hey, that was wrong. Guys like myself, which I'll tell you, my dad passed away a week before I turned 14. So at that age, you going into adulthood, you're not an adult and you're not a child. So I felt in myself that I'd been let down by something or something. So when I got back in the November, they just started writing exams. And of course, you know, I just put my name and the date. And Mr. Ivor Skuman was our form master. And he said to Normand, what are you doing? I said, sir, if they can take your father away at this age, does it matter? That's how your brain at that age, or my brain at that age, worked. And I just decided, no, I'll just put the date and that. And so he said, but I'm going to have to fail you. I said to him, sir, I've done what I want to do. You do what you have to do. And so obviously I failed, because in those years we had 4 terms. We never had the 3 terms. And he said, look, you passed the first 3 terms. Just, you know. And I think a good word for it, I rebelled. And from there, I started to be, which I didn't think was naughty, but it was, now that I think back of things I did in school, at class. I mean, you know, the guys that were with me, I won't mention names because, you know, what we did wasn't right. I mean, for argument's sake, the one guy who was he's passed on today, was a very good friend of mine, a very good rugby player. And we had a little guy in front of us, Bobby Lecho, who became a Springbok bantamweight boxer. And he just said we were doing bookkeeping, and he just said to him, tell him to get a move on with this. So as he finished the first book, he paused, he said, no, I just wanted the trial balance. So he waited till the end, got the trial balance, copied out the trial balance. So at the end of the class, they said, okay, hand in. And in those days, for bookkeeping, the master taught you sat there in the class, and it was Clary Hitchie. So Clary Hitchie said to where's the rest of your papers? He said, sir, I did it in my head. So, of course, that story went through the school like you can't there, that he got his trial. He did everything else in his head.
Sounds like a good JP accountant, very creative.
Yeah, very creative, absolutely.
Okay, and you said that it was the high school that sort of formed you in terms of manners, but what about the prep school? Because what was the difference between the prep school and the high school in those days?
Well, the high school, once again, we were very fortunate. We had Miss Hannah, who'd been there for donkey's years, and she was also a very stickler for manners. Taught us that when ladies come into the room, you stand up, and she really was a fine, and I've never heard anybody say anything against the way she ran that school, and it really was. I mean, everything about Jeppe Prep actually built us up, and a lot of the prep guys that went from Standard 5 to, in those days, Form 1, did exceptionally well because of the teaching that we got at Jeppe Prep. So teachers were very good.
So, I mean, I suppose you've mentioned a couple of people that you believe were mentors to you. Is there anyone else who you haven't mentioned that you believe out of your JP days were mentors or a mentor of yours?
Yes, I would say yes, there was, because at Jeppe Prep, I was at boarding school, and the boarding school that I was at was Casson Lodge, which then became Tabana, and it was run by Taffy Jones, and it was very well, and Taffy Jones as well taught us manners at the table. That you all sit down together, you say grace, and it's, to me, that was very important, because then I was only in Standard 2 when I went to boarding school, and there too I did have a bit of a learning problem. Well, I wouldn't say a hell of a learning problem, mainly because I was lazy and didn't want to do it. So
what changed? I mean, what do you think in those days? I mean, you've already spoken about the loss that you experienced. You spoke about the manners. You spoke about sort of forming you into somebody. I mean, what would you say you learnt during those days that shaped you after school?
I would say prep. At home you haven't got prep. You're supposed to come home, do your homework. At boarding school, you've got time. You have to go to prep in the mornings and in the evenings to do. And that, to me, is excellent. In fact, I believe now that what they should actually do is the first hour, unless you're a sportsman, but even then it wouldn't work, is to have an hour's extra. If you can, if you can't, well, if you're a good cricketer or a good swimmer or whatever, you'd have to go to do that. But to me, I don't think enough emphasis is put on homework. You know, sometimes I think there's too much homework, especially like if you're doing studying one like history, geography, where there's a lot of reading to be done. You know, so those are the ones that I battled with. I must be honest with you, with and of course English and Afrikaans. I wish I had met my wife before there, because Lorraine is Afrikaans.
Okay. And after school, what did you go on and do? I mean, I'm assuming that given the fact that you understood the need to have to do a lot more sort of preparation and studying, what did you do after school in respect of those fundamentals that you may have missed out on or I didn't realize were as important at school?
Well, at Jeppe, if I just there, I would say there's at least that I can think of out of 15 to 20 guys that went into the printing industry, which was very hard to get into the printing industry in those days. I mean, I went for about 9, 10 interviews, got down to the last 3, and I missed out in the last 3. And I went back to my mom and I just said, Mom, I can't get a job in the printing industry. I keep on getting to the last 3. And so she said, well, why don't you go to the bank? My dad was in the Standard Bank. So I said, Mom, I don't even pass my exams at Jeppe. Now you want me to go and write an entrance exam at the back. She said, go. Anyway, as fate would have it, I passed and I got in. And they said, all right, when you start, I had to start on the Monday morning. They put me in correspondence. The Thursday afternoon, I got a phone call and I heard the lady say, no, he's only allowed telephone calls at tea time or lunchtime. And the gentleman, Mr. Sporum, which I don't know if you guys met, George Sporum. Yeah. Anyway, his son was also at Jeppe, but a long time after me there. So he must have said to the lady, look, it's a matter of life and death, because he said, in that case, I don't know if those were the... But, you know, I spoke to him, so he said, hello, it's Mr. George Sporum here. The youngster that was supposed to start hasn't arrived, and he was supposed to be on Monday. If you want the job, it's yours. I said, please, sir, when can I start? He said, as soon as you want. And that was the Thursday. I said, tomorrow? He said, that's fine. I said, what time? He said, 8 o'clock. I said, I'll be there at 7:45. And from there, I never looked back, because I was going to do something, because your NDC 1, 2, and 3 are very much the same, like your English and your Afrikaans. It's the same in NTC 3 as it is in Matric. So, you know, I passed my NTC 1, 2, and 3. So there was a little bit of grey matter there that just had to be loosened up. You know?
I think that's the general. I think that's the general trend in most of us.
Yeah.
It's not a question of we weren't capable; we were just a little bit lazy.
Exactly.
I think so.
Exactly. Because I mean, of the guys that went into there and had, you know, become qualified there, owned their own businesses, I would say at least, as I said before, maybe at least a dozen, 2 dozen had their own businesses, printing business, and made a good living out of it. I mean, you know, printers were renowned for working overtime, because in print they need annual reports in time. This has got to be done in time. So there was a lot of time to work overtime.
Amazing.
In it, which was extra money for us, unless, of course, you know, like I was a rugby fanatic. There I was fact, I was fortunate at Jeppe. When I was in Standard 2, I got encephalitis,
Jeepers.
and I missed about 3 months of school. So they kept me back a year. So of course, being at Casson Lodge with Taffy Jones, he said to Ivor Skumon, says, "Listen, I've got a kid here who's, he's fast, and you could play him on the wing." So I said, "Well, send him to school on Thursday." So I missed Tuesday, I went there Thursday, got into the A side, and I played the whole season under 13A, had my photograph taken. So had I gone to Queen's, or I'm not going to say Kes because you know why, but so...
Okay, so you played under 13 at the high school as a standard 5 because you were a year ahead.
Yeah.
Amazing. Huh? So you played A's, and then when you got to school, you always played a year up.
And I was always,
Amazing.
I was always, and I played under 13A, under 14A, under 15A. And then from there I went straight into the first side from under 15A.
Wow.
So,
Could you maybe speak to some of the moments on the rugby field that you remember the most, or some victories that you still hold fondly when looking back at your time?
yes, well, like for argument's sake, Harold Bromberg that I mentioned, he was the left wing, I was the right wing. And when we went to practice the first day, he was a soccer player. And he said, "Well, what do I do?" So he said, "You see those poles there? This ball, you take this ball when they give it to you, and you go and dot it behind the white line underneath those poles." And then, so he says, "No, that's what you do." So of course, we had a lovely side. In fact, I think in 13A, 14A, under 15A, if we lost 6 games in those 3 years, it was a lot.
Sure.
And Harold and I scored tries every game, so it was. He said, "What an easy game this is."
Grazer, you mentioned your wife Lorraine. I understand she knows a lot about JP. She was with you in your JP Quantum days. But if you had to describe the school as a boy, both prep school and the high school, how would you describe it to Lorraine?
I think I'd say that if you really want your kid to come out with good manners, discipline, that's the school to send them. Especially today. I mean, and as I say, we were so lucky to have Miss Hannah at JP Prep, and then of course to have Mr. Grant there, which were both sticklers for manners and that. So I don't think, and also the standard, their teachers have always seemed to be of a higher standard than other primary schools. I don't say better. I mean, Leicester Road had a very good name with Frank Braun, and I think he was of the same character as Alan Grant was, But he was, of course, at the primary school, which was good. So, no, I honestly, that's why we would have sent our kids, but we lived on a small holding in Halfway House. And the reason we did that is to give our kids a chance to have a farming way of being brought up, have horses and pigs and ducks and you name it. So that's the reason we went there. And then I couldn't send them in those days to Casson Lodge. They they weren't of the material to let them go. I mean, when I went there, my grandmother had a boarding house just across the road in Roberts Avenue. So it wasn't as though I was miles away. But we said, no, we didn't want to send our boys there. And they were happy. And then, of course, Halfway House Primary was also a very good school, primary school. So our fort, we had 2 girls and then the 2 boys. All 4 of them went there and they enjoyed it.
Okay.
And they did very well there.
Amazing.
And then, of course, Jeppe, once it said, right, they were adamant from, when they were in Standard 2, Standard 3, that they were going to go to Jeppe. They wanted to go to Jeppe, and we said them. In actual fact, when I went, Dave Quayle was the headmaster there, and he said, Grazer, you know the story, bring me the reports. So I took the reports. Gary, there was only 14 months difference between the 2 of them. So I took the reports there. The next day I got a phone call from him. He said, Grazer, I need to talk to you. So the following day I went in to see. I said, is there a problem? He said, I wouldn't call it a problem, but it's something that could worry you and myself. He said, your youngest one, Darren, not a problem. But Gary always had a bit of a learning problem, which I did also at that age. So I said to him, David, I know my 2 boys, and he says, well, I'm telling you something now, I'm sorry to interrupt you. He says, but Gary won't pass 1 term, never mind a year. So I said, okay, fine, that's there, but I still want them to go. And then when I got them, and I sat them down and I said, guys, this is what comes from the headmaster now. Darren, you fine, you carry on like that, you'll be 100%. Gary, they say no. But boy, we know you, and we say, do that, you can do it. So all you've got to do is do your home, listen in class, and there. He went right through, Gary, for 1, 2, 3, 4, he never got a varsity pass, but he got his matric. Darren and Lundy, I don't know if you met Grant Lundy yet, they were best pals, and the 2 of them were fine. They failed, Standard 6. So, it just shows you that if a child goes and's got the right attitude and the right dementia that wants to do well, they can. And he worked hard. I mean, in the end he became head boy at Sesame.
Wow.
But they said that in his matric year, he was at prep half an hour in the mornings before everybody, and he stayed another half an hour to an hour in the evenings, extra, to put in that time to make sure that he did it. Wow. So, and that, I think that's there, because once he finished that, and then he went to the army, and he became a corporal, and he had his own thing, and he used what he learned at Jeppe as far as treating people, how to get the best out of people. And, they say it was fantastic, because a guy that I used to do printing for, he said to me, do I know Gary Normand? I said, yes, it's my son. He said, oh, well, he's my corporal. And he said, he has helped me get through my 2 years. Because, at the end of the 2 years, you've got to run a full marathon in full gear with your rifle, with your, and this poor guy couldn't do it. So Gary just said, give me your rifle and your backpack. And he ran with him with this and managed to get him. So, he had a fantastic heart, And also, whatever he learnt, he just went that extra mile to make sure that he was. So he was, I mean, he made such a name for himself. I don't know if you've heard anything in the school about him. And I mean, the golf day, for them to do that, you know, they have the Gary Norman Golf Day now in memory of him.
Which we're playing tomorrow. Just tell us a little bit about your fascination with Jeppe memorabilia, and then just talk about the museum after that, because I know that you had quite a big collection of memorabilia.
Still got. In fact, before you go, I'll take you. I've had a Jeppe room wherever we've been. In fact, when we lived on the plot, I had 3 Jeppe rooms. And I just took all our photographs that we had of the boys, when, you know, whether it be swimming or athletics or that, and we put them all around. Of course, Lolly, you know, could have used that room for something else, but no, it was lovely. And I think the years and the friendship, as I said, 90% of my friends today are still guys that I was at school with, or sons where their fathers were at school with us. I mean, I know a lot of kids whose fathers were with me, and I'd met them, and they're lovely guys, and they feel exactly the same. So yes, I've got a lot of memorabilia there. We used to play, that was Dave Harding that phoned just now. We used to play golf at Kensington on a Saturday morning. And afterwards we used to shower and then go and have a couple of beers and then go home. And our cubicles there never had the doors. It was just the cubicles, so you could see the guys there. And I was showering, and this guy had his back towards me, but he had a little rose tattooed on his bum, you know. So I didn't think anything of it then. And we went in, and I didn't tell anybody. Then driving home, I thought to myself, you know what I'm going to do? The girls' school had a little badge like this. We never had it. It was only, I think, maybe a centimetre and a half, you know. I said, I'm going to get one of those, and I'm going to go and have it tattooed on my bum. So, which I did. And of course the boys thought, yes, we can. I said, no. While you're at school, you're having no tattoos. Don't come with a hole in your ear or anything like that. At Jeppe, you have nothing of that kind. What you do after you leave school, that's fine. But not while you're at school. You don't do that. So they believed and had it there. And then, of course, they did it. It was the first one was Gary and Darren, my 2 boys. John Curtis. I don't know if you've met John Curtis. No. Yeah, John Curtis had there, and Brett Roberski. So
you are the infamous. I was going to talk about traditions and sort of a legacy, but because that was a very popular thing when I was matriculating, everybody came out and got a tattoo.
Yeah.
So you were number one.
I was number one too. So, yeah, I was number one, and you know I'm not a tattoo person. I could never go and have a tattoo on my arms or anything like that, because but I mean, when you shower and someone sees it, so be it. You know what I'm saying? But
100%.
I just thought it would be. And then after that, I had mine done, it must have been beginning in 1980. And anyway, then after that, from about 1990, the captain of the first rugger side said, right guys, after the last game, and then they'd all go together and have it done. And then the swimmers, I believe, they also, and they've got a little tattoo just above their Speedo. little badge just tattooed there. So which I think is something nice if you enter. It's not a skull and crossbone or these things they have. It's just something that's with you for the rest of your life. Yeah. So I had that one, and then must have been about how many? Maybe 10 years ago. I thought now I must upgrade this. So I had on the one cheek I've got the little one, and then for Jeppe Prep, and then on the other one I've got the other, which I'm the only one so far. Was
Well, I think that we need that for the museum. A picture of that for the museum.
I think as you walk in, that will be a great one.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to ask, what is one difference and one similarity that you've seen over your time at Jeppe through yourself being a Jeppe boy and through sending your son through the school and seeing how the school has evolved since then? What is the one similarity that the school will forever have in your mind, and what is one of the key differences that you think is
Well, there too, I think that I noticed that if you walk through that school, doesn't matter who you are, they will greet you. Good afternoon, sir. Their ties at the buttoned and pull your blazer. Whereas we had it told to do that, but it wasn't as strict as it is today. And I think that's it's a good thing for a school that anybody that comes there, whether you know them or not, to greet them, good day, ma'am, good afternoon, sir. And that to me is, I believe there. And then of course the sportsmanship at an athletics meeting and at rugby, I think that's also improved a lot, whereby there's no booing. I don't know if you've noticed that. Well, a couple of times in our day there was, and we didn't think anything of it then, because when you're that age, you don't do it. But I believe the mannerism on a sports field, Jeppe has improved. It really has. And also when people, if you talk to people, my friend's son is at Jeppe and he's done exceptionally well, or the daughter is there. I mean, the girls' school is something like 22 years or something now. They've had 100% pass rate.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's quite something to be proud of.
Yeah.
So.
One of my fondest memories, speaking of the small things, Mr. Jackson has this rule at Jeppe where he says that the way you can judge a great school is through a Coke bottle challenge, where he will leave an empty Coke bottle and he'll count the number of boys who walk over the bottle before they pick it up. And I was fond enough, proud enough to be one of the boys to pick up Mr. Jackson's Coke bottle. But I think what it does is it instills this fear every time you see a piece of paper as Mr. Jackson. You're watching from a distance, but 100% I understand.
You could imagine if we did that in the country.
I think the principle is always that your character is about or defined by what you do when no one's looking. So you don't know somebody's looking at you stepping over a Coke bottle. You want to do it because you think it's right. I think that's the principle, and I think that's what we're trying to say, is that it's about, that's what a school like ours has instilled in us, is for the most part doing things the right way, whether people are watching or not, because it just it brings you a level of pride. Okay.
One of the questions we have here is, what advice would you have given to your younger self just entering the gates of Jeppe? What would be the one quote or one piece of advice that you would share with grade 8 Mr. Normand back in the day?
Just do your homework. Listen in class, do as you've told, and it'll make such a difference in your life. I mean, that, let's call it an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours at night to get through but do your homework as best you can. And also don't be shy to ask questions. I mean, I did bookkeeping, it was my best subject there. We had Clary Hitchie. And I could go to Clary Hitchie and say, "Sir, I didn't understand this." He would then go back and say, "What you didn't understand is because of this." And he would explain to you how not to do that again. And that I think is a big thing in class. Sometimes you're shy to ask in front of everybody, can you do this, can you do that? Because then the guys mock you. But even then you shouldn't, if they do, so what? Because at that time you're going to feel a little bit shy. But that question that you're asking them at that time is going to pay dividends later on in life, And I also think a lot of I don't want to say teaching, but a lot of mannerism also shouldn't only come from the school. It starts at home, as your kids, and that I think should be taught mainly at primary schools. But to me, when I walk through those gates, boy, it's a privilege to say I went to Jeppe. All right, I didn't do well there, but I listened in class, and I know that I picked up a lot more listening in class than if I didn't listen. Imagine that, not doing your homework and still not listening. Then I would have.
So just talking about that, I think you're spot on in that most guys believe that it's a privilege. In our last podcast with Mr. Kevin Tate, he mentioned that there was somebody who spoke about the JP being a fabled high school and that we are the custodian of the intangible. It's very difficult to try and describe what we feel for the school. There are obvious people who've loved the school. You've seen, since you've left school, you've seen a lot of different types of old boys. I think that more so, certainly in the later years now, we've formalized the Old Boys Association. We've made sure that there's guys contributing back into the school. What would you, if you could give a message to current old boys and future old boys, what would it be, and why?
Take just not even 10% of your salary, but make sure you're saving that money. So, like we do too, there's the Theo Jackson Fund, and then we got the
Legacy Club.
The Legacy Club. Now we donate to, and you don't have to, just because it's 500 Rand, think that, hey, I should rather give more than that, But I really feel that's a big thing in life. Is, as it says, the Bible, it's better to give than to receive. And I think if we spread that to our kids, and that, because a lot of kids are selfish. You watch kids with their toys. You give him a nice toy. When you give him his first toy, you must say, now this is your toy, but you must share it. Because that's the way to go. I feel anyway. And a lot of stuff that, I loved that school so much that I didn't try and walk around with my top button open and be a breaker. I don't know if you know what a breaker means, but anyway.
Chad's a breaker.
South,
Chad's a breaker. Can't you see?
So, but honestly, even I wherever I go, and people say, "What school do you?" I said, "I went to the best school." Another thing, it's a good
and
thing.
you have the tattoos to prove it.
Yeah. Another thing that you must say, I tell people, you know what the best thing that came out of King Edward's? Know what? The road to Jeppe.
Really good.
Okay, so the question that we use to conclude our podcast every episode, it's a simple question, but I think it has profound meaning, and it's, what is the greatest thing that Jeppe has taught you?
Yeah, there are so many, eh? But the greatest thing I think that I've learned from Jeppe is kindness and just building a friendship, and don't be a two-face. Somebody does something to you, don't talk behind his back. Just go and say to him, Jono, this is what you said. Why?
Perfect.
Grazer, thank you so much for all of your time.
I just hope it's good enough and you don't walk out here and say, hey, you know, what a waste of time that was.
So I can assure you and everybody who's watching, this was certainly not a waste of time. The whole objective, as I said to you before, of this podcast is to create memories and have a preservation of all of the stories, whether some people want to listen or not. But it's just amazing to spend time with you. We appreciate, again, your hospitality. And we hope that we can do a second episode maybe in season 2, where we can come talk about some of the stuff we didn't cover. But it's been great to spend time with you, Chad. Well done.
And it's been very kind of you, both very well-mannered young men, which is
Products of
also
Jeppe.
which is also a good thing, you know, with people. Jeppe guys, they, you know, when you meet them, 9 out of 10 of them, you got the odd one, you know. Take that guy, Grazer Normand, I mean, where do you find him? Yeah.
All we see is